Chosen ones. They tortured you in silence, and now they're running from the very storm they summoned. They whispered behind your back, smiled in your face, and orchestrated situations to break you, thinking you'd stay broken. But what they didn't understand was that you are not just anybody. You are divinely marked, and God does not sleep on the suffering of his anointed. He watches, he waits, and when the time is right, he responds, not with petty vengeance, but with holy justice. When people mess with you, they aren't just committing social injustice, they're challenging divine authority. And as Galatians 6:7 warns, do not be deceived, God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows. This is not superstition, it's spiritual law. You see, when someone targets a chosen one, someone walking in purpose, in obedience, and under divine favor, they're not just starting drama. They're activating a spiritual chain reaction that will eventually implode in their own life. Take the story of the young woman who was ridiculed in silence. Her kindness was seen as weakness. Her light made others uncomfortable. But after she walked away quietly, the unraveling began. One by one, those who tormented her began facing inexplicable hardships, broken relationships, missed opportunities, sudden downfalls. This wasn't a coincidence, it was divine intervention. And this kind of pattern is repeated across countless stories of people chosen by God. From Joseph in the Bible, who was sold into slavery by his own brothers only to become a ruler, to David, hunted by Saul but ultimately crowned king. The recurring theme, God protects his own and he turns pain into elevation. The betrayal may be personal, but the response is supernatural. So why does God respond so fiercely when someone mistreats you? Because to him, you are a vessel of purpose. You carry light in a dark world. And when someone tries to extinguish that light, they're threatening a divine agenda. God's wrath isn't about ego. It's about justice and protection. Spiritual law dictates that when someone violates a sacred boundary, especially one that involves his chosen, consequences will follow. These aren't just metaphysical ideas. Even science tells us that every action has a reaction, a consequence. In the spiritual world, the reaction is often more powerful, more precise, and sometimes more public. And yes, some of the very people lighting those fires are family members, old friends, or trusted colleagues. They mistake your gentleness for gullibility. They think your silence means weakness. But what they don't see is the heavenly army standing behind you. When the mocking ends and their world begins to unravel, they'll realize too late. They weren't just fighting you, they were contending with God. Psalm 105:15 isn't just a poetic phrase, it's a divine warning. Touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm. It means heaven takes your pain personally. And when God gets involved, the tables turn fast. Chosen ones, understand this. Your suffering was never unnoticed. Your tears were never in vain. God keeps the receipts. And when the appointed time comes, he moves with a power no man can stop. The storm your enemies summoned has returned, and now the one's running. Point 1, you were targeted because you carry divine frequency. Chosen ones, let's break this down. You were never the problem. It was never your tone, your timing, your clothes, your voice, or even your past. From the moment you stepped into certain rooms, atmospheres changed. Why? Because your presence is prophetic, your walk, your peace, your smile, it carries divine data. You are a living, breathing disruption to the darkness people have been hiding behind. Your very existence turns hidden agendas into exposed operations. Just standing in your truth activates a chain reaction in the spiritual realm. You didn't even have to say a word. Demons just knew you were not one of them, and that made you dangerous. You didn't get attacked because you were weak. You got attacked because your light exposed what others were desperately trying to keep buried. And here's the wild part. It wasn't even personal. It was spiritual. You didn't provoke them with a single insult. What triggered them was the anointing they couldn't figure out. That's why the gossip got louder. That's why the looks got colder. That's why the betrayal cut deeper than it should have. Because when truth walks in, lies scramble. When authenticity shows up, pretense panics. Your presence carries frequency, and not everyone can survive your vibration. This is spiritual warfare 101. Now let's get educational for a second. In the Bible, 1 Samuel 16:23 tells us that whenever David played the harp, the evil spirit tormenting King Saul would leave him. Why? Because David's presence wasn't just musical, it was spiritual. It carried divine authority. That's you, chosen one. You walk into break rooms and people go silent, not because you're scary, but because conviction just stepped into the space. Your spirit reminds them of everything they've avoided: truth, healing, growth, and accountability. But here's what they didn't know: you weren't fighting alone. Every dart thrown at you, every insult, every fake friend, every spiritual ambush, God caught it. Psalm 105:15 says, "Do not touch my anointed ones. Do my prophets no harm." That's not poetic, that's legal, spiritually legal. They thought they were just throwing shade or being petty. But in the courts of heaven, that was a full-on act of war. And you, chosen one, are a vessel, a divine carrier. You don't just walk through life, you're assigned to shift it. So what happens when someone attacks God's vessel? Simple, divine consequences, not because you wished harm on them, but because he defends his own. That's what they misunderstood. They thought hurting you would break you, but all they did was provoke your God. All they did was add fuel to the fire they can no longer control. Isaiah 54:17 promises that no weapon formed against you shall prosper. That doesn't mean the weapon won't form, it means it won't win. You didn't just survive the attack, you activated judgment. Some of you all are confused why you didn't even retaliate, but suddenly people's lives started falling apart. That's not karma, that's reaping what they sowed. That's God saying, "Touch not my chosen." And the best part, you didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't have to plot revenge. All you had to do was keep walking in truth, in love, and in alignment. You are the evidence that God still walks this earth through people. And your glow, it's not aesthetic, it's a revelation. You carry the kind of peace that can't be explained, only felt. That's why you're attacked. That's why you're misunderstood. That's why no matter how much you try to just get along, something in you keeps setting things off. Because the spirit in you agitates the spirits around you. So if you've ever wondered why being nice didn't stop the hate, why staying quiet didn't stop the rumors, or why praying for them didn't change their hearts, it's because your light did its job, and their demons did theirs. But now, the season has shifted. You're not in survival anymore. You're in spiritual jurisdiction. Heaven has backed your name, and hell has been notified. They thought they were playing with you, but they just provoked God. Point 2, they tortured you, but God watched silently at first. Now let's get real, chosen ones. You didn't choose this path chose you, and along the way it crushed you, humbled you, and lit you on fire just to show the world you could survive the flames. There were nights you cried so hard, your pillow felt like quicksand. Days where you walked around with a forced smile, but inside your spirit was collapsing under the weight of betrayal, isolation, and doubt. You knelt down, hands trembling, tears streaming, and you asked, "Why me, God?" Meanwhile, your enemies were laughing, boldly, proudly, and publicly. They boasted about your failures, whispered lies to anyone who'd listen, and played judge, jury, and executioner to your story before it was even finished. But here's the sacred truth. Don't confuse God's silence with his absence. God is not loud, but he is always present, and he doesn't always respond in the moment because he's playing chess while your enemies are playing checkers. You see, the delay you experienced wasn't a denial, it was a setup. God was positioning you for something so strategic, so precise, that only heaven could orchestrate it. The setback was never about punishment, it was preparation. He had to let some people expose themselves. He had to let the snake slither close before he cut the head clean off. There's a divine pattern to this. Think about it. Pharaoh mocked Moses right up until the Red Sea swallowed his army. Haman built gallows for Mordecai, bragged about it, and invited people over to see it, only to end up hanging from his own trap. This isn't just spiritual fluff. These are biblical power moves recorded in history, proving that when God moves, it's surgical, devastating, and undeniable. Heaven doesn't clap back like man does. Heaven waits, then strikes with holy precision. Chosen one, you didn't have to do anything but exist in your truth, and that's what rattled them. Your very presence convicted their lies. Your resilience highlighted their cowardice. Your ability to walk with integrity while they stumbled through manipulation, that exposed them. They didn't hate you because you did something wrong. They hated you because your light made their darkness uncomfortable. And now they're shaking quietly, privately, because they're watching the very curses they sent your way boomerang back to them. They're waking up in the middle of the night, tormented by guilt, anxiety, and fear, not because of you, but because God saw everything. Every word, every betrayal, every trap, every time they pretended to help you while secretly hoping you'd fall, and heaven took notes. Here's what's happening. Spiritual law is in motion. You reap what you sow isn't a cute quote, it's divine justice. And right now, the seeds they planted in deception are sprouting back into their own lives. The confusion they tried to place on you, it's now swallowing their mind. The job they lied to take from you, it's turning into their burden. The circle they tried to turn against you, that same circle is now questioning them. Let them watch. Let them wonder how you're still standing. Let them obsess over how someone they tried to break came back better, stronger, and more anointed than ever. You don't have to gloat. Your glow is loud enough. You don't have to seek revenge. Your rise is the clapback. Because the same God who stayed silent while they mocked you is the same God who's about to move so loud, it'll silence them forever. This is your divine reversal, chosen one. The tables didn't just turn, they flipped, and you didn't even have to touch them. Point 3, God is not mocked. The spiritual consequences are real. Let's keep it all the way real, chosen ones. There's something cosmic, even divine, about the way the universe handles karma. And when you're chosen, it doesn't take long for people to realize that messing with you has consequences, spiritual ones. See, the problem isn't just that they hurt you. The real problem is they thought they could without repercussions. They thought their manipulation was slick, their gossip untouchable, their betrayal justified. They thought they could steal your peace, your name, and your joy and walk off like a villain in a Netflix drama, untouched and victorious. But here's the part they didn't account for, the anointing on your life. God doesn't sleep, he doesn't blink, he doesn't forget. And you, chosen one, are covered. You're not just anybody. Galatians 6:7 doesn't lie. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. A man reaps what he sows. You were their target, but now they're dealing with the backlash of sowing deception into a protected soul. You didn't even have to fight back. You didn't have to expose them, argue with them, or go toe-to-toe. All you had to do was keep walking, and that obedience, that spiritual restraint, that silence activated divine justice. Now you're hearing whispers through the grapevine. Some of them are depressed. Others are isolated, can't sleep at night. Their hair is falling out. Relationships are falling apart. Jobs lost, friendships destroyed. They feel like the world is turning against them, and deep down, they have no idea why. But you do. Because when they lit that fire meant to destroy you, they forgot how fire works. It spreads, and now it's consuming them. That's not karma, that's the correction. Psychologists call it psychosomatic distress. When the soul is heavy with guilt and shame, especially when someone refuses to acknowledge the pain they've caused, it begins to manifest physically. Insomnia, anxiety, isolation, and yet they'll pretend they're fine. But chosen ones, you can feel the shift. You don't wish them harm. You don't smile at their downfall, but you recognize that justice in divine timing has a way of serving itself, not for your revenge, but for your release. They mocked your spirituality. They joked about your convictions. They told people you were too emotional, too intense, and too sensitive. But those very sensitivities, they're what made you a mirror. And when you showed up, loving, loyal, real, they couldn't stand it because your purity exposed their manipulation. Your honesty made their lies feel louder. Your peace made their chaos unbearable. You didn't have to point a finger. They saw themselves in you, and they hated what they saw. But here's the good news, chosen one. You're still standing. Better. Stronger. Unshaken. Because no matter what they tried to do behind closed doors, God saw it all. Every snake in the grass, every whispered lie, every masked betrayal, and he marked it. You didn't even have to clap back. He's handling it quietly, completely, strategically. So don't gloat, don't boast, just keep being who you are, a light in the dark. Because when truth enters the room, lies scatter. That's why they're uncomfortable around you. That's why the gossip got louder. You became everything they said you couldn't be. And now they're watching the fire they lit turn on them. Point 4, you are the mirror that showed them their own darkness. Absolutely, chosen one. Let's dive into this with full spirit. This one is deep, and it hits on a spiritual truth that many people can feel, but few can articulate. You didn't clap back. You didn't expose them with receipts or launch a public takedown. All you did was exist in alignment. You walked in a room with quiet confidence. You spoke with love instead of spite. You radiated peace without performing. And just by being who God called you to be, you triggered the chaos in others. Why? Because light doesn't scream. It just shows up. And when it does, darkness has no place to hide. Here's the raw truth. The moment you stepped into your purpose, you became a mirror. a spiritual mirror. Your growth highlighted their stagnation. Your integrity reflected their deception. Your healing revealed their wounds. And that kind of reflection hurts. Because when someone's been running from accountability their whole life, the worst thing you can do to them is not argue, but just be whole. They can't yell at you without hearing the echo of their own lies. They can't look at you without seeing everything they were too afraid to become. That's not just insecurity, that's conviction. Conviction, by definition, is a deep, unshakable inner awareness of guilt or wrong. And it doesn't need anyone to say a word. It lives in silence. That's why they flinch when you're around. That's why the energy gets weird when you enter. That's why they throw shade, spread gossip, or call you too much, too different, or hard to deal with, because your authenticity tells on them. And instead of changing, they react like toddlers having a tantrum in front of a mirror. They don't want to look inward. They just want to break the thing that's showing them who they are. But here's where the spiritual law kicks in, chosen one. You can't destroy a mirror made by God. You can throw rocks, you can curse at it, and you can even try to bury it. But all you'll do is injure yourself in the process. That's what's happening now. The same people who mocked your calling, who belittled your growth, who rolled their eyes when you started healing, they're bleeding spiritually, emotionally, mentally, because of the lies they used to live behind don't work anymore. And here's a psychological truth backed by science. When someone is confronted by what's called cognitive dissonance, the tension that arises when their actions contradict their beliefs, they'll do anything to eliminate that discomfort. Most healthy people choose to evolve, but those stuck in ego, they project, they gaslight, they attack the person who triggered their discomfort. That's you. You're the trigger, not because you're wrong, but because you're right, and nothing exposes falsehood faster than unapologetic truth. But don't get bitter, chosen one. That reaction, it is actually proof of your power. You are living confirmation that elevation is possible. You are walking evidence that peace can exist in chaos. You are spiritual proof that obedience to God's call changes lives. That's why you scare them, because you remind them they could have done the same, but didn't. The most powerful thing you ever did wasn't casting out demons with your hands. It was casting them out with your presence. It was showing up fully healed in a room full of people still pretending. It was choosing to love when they chose to hate. And that, my friend, is divine warfare without saying a word. So if the gossip's louder, the shade's darker, and the distance from fake friends is growing, smile. You're doing it right. Their discomfort is your confirmation. You didn't have to lift a finger because your existence itself is holy resistance. They tried to destroy the mirror, but all they did was shatter their illusion, and now you keep shining because God never wastes light. Stay awake, chosen one. Your presence is preaching louder than their accusations ever could. Point 5, your suffering activated divine elevation. Let me tell you something powerful, chosen one. Something most people miss because they're too busy trying to pray their enemies away. Sometimes your enemies are the very key to your promotion. Wild, right? The ones plotting your downfall, whispering lies in secret rooms, setting emotional traps. They're not just a part of your story, they're instruments of your divine elevation. And here's the deeper truth. The more intense their attacks, the greater your assignment. Take a look at Joseph, straight out of Genesis. His brothers threw him into a pit out of jealousy. They faked his death, sold him into slavery. Potiphar's wife lied about him, tried to trap him in a scandal he didn't ask for. He got thrown into prison for doing the right thing, and yet God used every single injustice as bricks to build a platform. From a prison cell to the palace, Joseph rose to become second in command over Egypt, not because life was easy, but because it was painfully divine. This isn't just biblical drama. It's psychological too. Studies in post-traumatic growth show that some individuals who undergo extreme adversity end up with more resilience, more empathy, and more purpose than ever before. Why? Because pressure creates diamonds, fire forges gold, and betrayal births vision. Your enemies unknowingly put you through the kind of emotional boot camp that no motivational speaker or self-help book could. They broke the weak parts of you. They poked the wounds you were trying to avoid. But in doing so, they pushed you toward healing, revelation, and yes, promotion. See that heartbreak? It wasn't to destroy you. It was to strip the illusion. That job loss, it wasn't rejection, it was redirection. The silence from people you once trusted, that wasn't abandonment, It was divine isolation, God pulling you into a space where he could speak without interference. Some of you all needed to be betrayed, so you'd finally stop shrinking to fit into rooms God never meant for you. You were never meant to blend in. You were born to stand out, and that's why your glow is different now. That's why people look at you and wonder how you're still standing. Because the fire didn't burn you, it refined you. It stripped away the ego, the fear, and the dependence, and left only the essence, the chosen one. Your enemies lit a fire thinking it would consume you, but all they did was burn off the dead layers, sharpen your focus, and amplify your calling. So now when people see you walking with purpose, talking with power, and loving yourself out loud, they don't realize it was their hate that helped birth it. And that's the irony of spiritual warfare. The devil overplays his hand every time. What he sends to break you, God uses to build you. What was meant to silence you ends up giving you the loudest voice. Don't resent your enemies. Don't waste energy seeking revenge. Instead, recognize their role. They're like the gym trainers of your soul, showing up with resistance so you can grow stronger. Without Goliath, David would have never been known. Without Pharaoh's oppression, Moses would have stayed in the palace. Without betrayal, Jesus would have never gone to the cross and fulfilled his mission. Your enemies qualified you. So yes, chosen one, your tears watered your purpose. Your suffering became the fertilizer for your assignment. And every plot against you, every lie, every rejection, all of it a setup for elevation. You've been tested, but now you're trusted. That's why your oil is thicker. That's why your discernment is deeper. That's why your peace is louder than their noise. Let them talk, let them plot. But know this, the next time they throw you in a pit, remember, you're not buried, you're planted, and what's planted by God must rise. Point 6. They are now obsessed with watching you rise. This is the funny part, chosen ones. The same people who once laughed at you, doubted you, whispered about your downfall behind closed doors, and tossed stones your way are now secretly tuning into your every move like you're their favorite show. They don't like you, but they can't look away. They watch your stories without liking a single post. They refresh your page hoping to find evidence that you're slipping, but instead, they find light. They find power. They find the exact version of you they tried to extinguish, thriving, and it burns them. Oh yes, it burns them. Here's the truth. Your resilience irritates their demons. That energy you walk in, it's not just confidence, it's spiritual authority. The kind that exposes everything fake, fragile, and phony around it. You weren't supposed to rise. According to their expectations, you were supposed to be curled up somewhere, broken, bitter, and blaming life. But look at you now. You got up. And not just slowly, no. You stood with fire in your eyes, a glow on your skin, and a divine kind of peace that can't be bought or borrowed. That's what has them watching in silence, because they know they couldn't survive what you went through. They know they couldn't carry what you've been carrying and still walk with grace. That's the part they'll never admit. Let's get factual with it. Psychologically speaking, people often become obsessed with what they tried to destroy but couldn't. It's called cognitive dissonance. They expected you to fall apart, but you didn't. So now their brain is scrambling, trying to reconcile their expectations with your reality. Their gossip was supposed to ruin your name, but it elevated your influence. Their betrayal was supposed to break your spirit, but it opened doors they didn't even know existed. And this inner conflict creates a kind of emotional obsession. They hate how strong you are, but they can't stop watching to see what you'll do next. And don't get it twisted. Your blessings aren't random. You're chosen. That means you walk with a different kind of covering. The storms that were sent to drown you only trained you. The darkness didn't swallow you, it developed your discernment. While others were playing dirty, you stayed grounded, and now favor is following you like a shadow, opportunities are opening, peace is multiplying, and joy is flowing even in moments you didn't expect it. That's not luck, that's divine order. This is why people stare at you confused. How are they still smiling, they whisper. How did they survive that breakup, that loss, that smear campaign? But they won't ask you directly, because that would require acknowledging the truth. You were chosen and covered. And that acknowledgement costs more pride than they're willing to pay. So instead, they lurk, they refresh, they monitor. And here's the cherry on top. Every time they check your page, they feed the very thing they tried to kill. They are your accidental cheerleaders. They're boosting your algorithm with every silent view. They're giving you energy every time they think about you. It's spiritual irony at its finest. The ones who wanted your downfall have become unwilling witnesses to your ascension. So don't flinch, don't clap back, don't even block them. Let them see it all. Let them witness what favor looks like in real time. Your life is a sermon without words. And every step you take in power, peace, and purpose is preaching truth to every lie they ever told. You're not just surviving, chosen one. You're glowing in the dark. And nothing disturbs the enemy more than someone who wasn't supposed to make it shining anyway. Point 7, God will publicly vindicate you, chosen ones. Listen closely. This is not just about getting revenge. No. This is about vindication. There's a big difference. See, revenge is loud. It's emotional. It's an eye for an eye. But vindication is divine. It's surgical. It's quiet at first, and then it thunders. When God vindicates you, he doesn't sneak it in the background. He does it in full view. Psalm 23:5 tells you straight, "You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies." Not after they leave. Not once have they apologized, right there, in front of every single person who doubted you, dragged your name, and mocked your calling. Now here's the plot twist. The fire they tried to burn you with becomes the very light that reveals your glow. They thought they were throwing shade, but they accidentally made you shine. That's divine irony. That's God's justice. Chosen ones, you didn't ask to be attacked. You weren't out here starting drama. In fact, you were trying to mind your business, healing, growing, rising. But some people, they can't stand to see someone transform. It reminds them of everything they've refused to change, so they gossip, they lie, they conspire. But what they didn't know is that God keeps receipts. The tears you cried, recorded. The pain you endured, silently counted. Every false accusation logged. And now the clock has struck vindication. Heaven doesn't play favorites, but it does honor the faithful. And here's the spiritual law that flips the script. What they meant for evil, God uses for good. Genesis 50:20. When they buried you, they forgot something important. You were a seed, and now you're blooming right before their eyes. Some of them are watching in shock, others in secret regret. You know why they haven't apologized yet? Because pride is choking them. Because saying, "I was wrong about you," would mean facing their own insecurities. But trust this, some of your enemies will need your help soon. God is not petty, but he is poetic. Sometimes he'll put the same people who wounded you in a position where they need your healing hands. When that moment comes, when the very people who once mocked you, doubted you, or even plotted against you are forced to watch your rise, don't let ego take the wheel. Don't gloat, don't rub it in, and don't seek revenge. Just smile. Because what they're witnessing is not your ego being fed. It's God being glorified through your elevation. That smile is your silent sermon, that unbothered glow. It's the divine evidence of a prophecy fulfilled. That's the table prepared in the presence of your enemies, just like Psalm 23:5 promised. That's not just a metaphor, it's a spiritual reality. You didn't just survive what was meant to break you. You, the lies, the betrayal, and the sabotage. And now, the same people who swore you'd crumble under pressure are being forced to watch you stand, taller, wiser, and more spiritually covered than ever before. This isn't about revenge, it's about revelation. It's about the unveiling of who you were all along. Chosen ones, the pain you endured wasn't pointless. You are not suffering for nothing. Your life is an altar, a living testimony, and every injustice done to you is recorded in heaven's courtroom. People may forget how cruel they were, how they excluded you, and how they mocked your potential, but God never forgets. He is both witness and vindicator. What was meant to destroy you became the very process that awakened your hidden strength. The heartbreak, the rejection, the betrayal, these weren't just obstacles, they were the chisels that carved out your true character and spiritual authority. They tortured you emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. But in doing so, they unintentionally activated your divine DNA. They thought they were extinguishing you, but they didn't realize you, the flame. Fire doesn't destroy gold, it purifies it. And what you've been through has only refined you. That glow they see, that peace that surpasses understanding, that's not you pretending. That's you radiating the presence of the one who carried you through. And now they're left confused, sweating, wondering how you're still rising, still glowing, still loving, still forgiving, still unshaken. Because when you are truly chosen, there's a spiritual law in effect. That's not just scripture, it's strategy. It means every attack sent your way must first pass through the permission of God. And if he allowed it, then it's going to work for your good. Your enemies didn't stop your destiny. They accidentally confirmed it. They didn't block your purpose. They made it more undeniable. So keep walking, keep growing, keep loving, keep forgiving, not for them, but for you. Because bitterness is a chain, and your freedom is your testimony. If this message touched your spirit, let the world know you're still standing. Drop that fire emoji. Share this with someone who's been suffering in silence. Remind them they're not forgotten, they're favored. Chosen ones, the feast has just begun. Stay strong, stay awake, stay chosen. Because your glow speaks louder than their silence, and your rise is proof that God keeps his promises.